spare Tweedledum and Tweedledummer. Now, whilst this is Harry's autobiography, the title doesn't actually refer to him and his wife. It refers to somebody else, as you will find out in due course. Harry explains when he gets back from the Caribbean, it's to rave reviews, and he's done rather well. He explained about the tour to Granny, and she praised him. He wanted to celebrate, and with war in the offing, it was now or never. So it was Party Harry. Off he went to Bonkers Night Spot and Abracababra, going to various parties and clubs and pubs. But he explained that no matter where he went, there were two sorry-looking paps that he dubbed Tweedledum and Tweedledummer. He explained that for much of his adult life, he's been followed by paps, but these two faces were there all of the time. When there was a mob of paparazzi, he saw them in the middle of it, and sometimes, when there was nobody around, it was just these two by themselves. But he explained that they would appear in lots of strange places, and he said, for instance, he would leave a friend's apartment, and there they would be, in the middle of the street. Furthermore, he found that they'd be more ruthless, more aggressive. They'd chase him to his police car. They would block his path. They would block him from getting into the car. They'd chase the car down the street. He didn't know who they were, and he was a little bit perplexed as to how they were able to turn up in the way that they did. He explained that he didn't think that they got any kind of sixth sense, and on the contrary, he says, and oh the irony, they looked as if they didn't possess one full frontal cortex between them. It leaves Harry musing as to how they know where to find him. He also says they were after William as well. William had no idea how they were able to work out their location, and accordingly, Billy the Rock, who I think is the police officer protecting them, went up to them and interrogated them. He got a sense of them. Apparently, the older one was doughy and with a close crop black hair and a smile that chilled blood. And the other one never smiled and rarely spoke. He mostly just stared. Harry wanted to know what their game was, but Billy said he didn't know. They were following him everywhere, and he said they were getting rich off him. They apparently would run alongside, pressing the buttons on their cameras, reeling off 200 photos in 10 seconds. Maybe they wanted a reaction. Harry said he fantasized about punching them. However, he then said, or rather wrote, "Because in the end, I decided that was their game. That was what it was all about. Two fellas who weren't famous, thinking it must be fabulous to be famous, trying to become famous by attacking and ruining the life of someone famous." Oh, hang on a second. My irony alert has just gone off in a major way. Two people attacking other people to make themselves famous and to ruin the life of somebody famous. Who might that make a reference to? Who might be engaging in that? Can you think of any one that might fit that description, valuable viewers? Do you know of anybody who has sought to become famous and maintain their fame as a consequence of attacking and ruining the life of someone famous? I'm sure somebody must spring to mind in that regard. Naturally, of course, that fits with Harry's wife, and to an extent with Harry. Of course, Harry was already famous in his own right, but he maintains fame and the benefits that come with it by joining in the attacks on his family. Harry's wife, of course, became famous by marrying Harry, and then has continued with her, perhaps infamy would be a better description, by doing what? Whining and complaining and maintaining that she's the victim, whilst attacking other people, her own family and the royal family, and in effect seeking to ruin their lives. It's hilarious that Harry writes such a chapter, or Maybe at this point J.R. Muringer has got so thoroughly fed up of dealing with this crap that he's starting to insert paragraphs such as this in the knowledge that anybody with a semblance of brain cells would pick up on this. I'll leave it to you to make that determination. He poses the question, why did they want to be famous? And he didn't know. And ultimately, he then explained that he thought, well, perhaps if you could go and talk to them and said, look, I don't live in a castle, my grandma does. But the fact is that apparently these two paparazzi had far grander lifestyles than Harry's. Billy had done a deep dive into their finances and learned that they each own multiple houses, several luxury cars, purchased with the proceeds from their photos of Harry and his family. Apparently, they had offshore bank accounts as well, like their sponsors, the media barons. Now, again, isn't it interesting that Harry complains about the intrusion of his privacy, but then ensures that he is able to garner this information about the paparazzi? I find it astonishing that they would make so much money as to be wealthier than Harry, but nevertheless, there's a deep dive that has been done into these two characters. It's also interesting that they spend all of their time wandering around after Harry. I suspect there's a somewhat an exaggeration here, because if they are as wealthy as Harry's suggesting, one would have thought they'd be enjoying the fruits of their wealth rather than hanging around in alleyways jumping out on Harry. But there we are. Of course, as always, we're only getting the narrative from Harry about all of this. But it is interesting that, once again, his behaviour smacks of that which is we've always seen from his wife, namely, I can complain about you, and I'm allowed to do exactly the same thing that I'm complaining about. We see this, of course, with the way that Harry's wife behaves, and of course that is as a consequence of her sense of entitlement, lack of emotional empathy, lack of accountability, and the fact that she's blinded by her narcissism. What we also understand and see, of course, is that is something that's done by Harry's wife's supporters regularly. They will lash out and accuse people of, you don't know her and you shouldn't write these things, and then they engage in exactly the same thing that they're complaining that you're engaging in. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, does it? But Harry is spending a lot of time bemoaning the existence of these two individuals. And then he moves on to Rupert Murdoch and stating that he knew that he was evil. He basically stated that when you've been chased by someone's henchmen through the streets of a busy modern city, you lose all doubt about where they stand on the great moral continuum. Right, okay. He explains, all my life I'd heard jokes about the links between royal misbehaviour and centuries of inbreeding, but it was then I realised. Lack of genetic diversity was nothing compared to press gaslighting. Marrying your cousin is far less dicey than becoming a profit centre for Murdoch Inc. And he then says that he doesn't care much for Murdoch's politics, and he didn't like the harm that he did each and every day to the truth. And truth is there with a capital letter. And again, this really has to be the irony chapter, doesn't it? Because we have two individuals who claim that they want to tackle misinformation, but then end up doling it out on a regular basis, as we've seen with the errors and inconsistencies in so many things that Harry's wife has put out there. There's a long list of them, and also what Harry has been engaging in also. And ultimately, to start saying, for instance, that Murdoch twists and damages the truth is quite hilarious. Of course, that is an accusation that can be levelled at him, but coming from two individuals that engage in the similar behaviour is, of course, rather amusing. So quite the chapter there that shows an absolute lack of awareness and provides us all with a bit of a internal chortle at the blindness of Harry and Harry's wife in their behaviours. What's up next? Well, it's Cressida. Join me there.